Half-Life 3 is kind of PC gaming's biggest enigmas. Where did Half-Life 3 go, and what really happened to the Half-Life franchise? And these are all questions that we've all had and we want answers to. But there are multiple factors as to why we haven't seen a Half-Life 3. And these factors are all part of cultural significance of the Half-Life franchise and the fan expectation of what Half-Life 3 would be, because the first two games knocked it out of the park, so could they really do it with a third one? But then there are also factors like Valve changing focus from creating games, to be honest, to moving to their Steam platform as a whole, and these are all factors that I'm going to get into for the rest of the video. Now, before we move on to specifically Half-Life 3, I think it's good that we get a little bit of context around the Half-Life franchise. Half-Life 1 was released in 1998 and was pretty innovative when it comes to first-person shooters, with immersive storytelling and innovative gameplay and advanced enemy AI as well. And I don't think people really understand the significance of Half-Life and how much impact it really had on the gaming space, because to be honest, it kind of set a whole standard for game narratives and gameplay mechanics, and really did inspire game franchises like BioShock and even Metro. And Half-Life 2 released in 2004 and introduced the new Source engine that Valve were going to use for the rest of their games, and it became a cornerstone of the gaming industry, being used for games like Portal and Team Fortress, which are both Valve's properties. The game's physics-based gameplay and its environmental storytelling influenced a whole generation of game developers. And the success of Half-Life 2 really led to the success of Valve, to be honest. Half-Life 2 established Valve as a prime digital distributor when it came to video games, cementing Valve's reputation as a leading developer in the gaming kind of sphere. Now, I'm not too sure if you guys know about this, but basically in 2003, part of Half-Life 2 was leaked by a hacker, and many people got to play the game maybe a year before it even released. And this is another thing, when a game is released way too early before it's meant to be seen, there is going to be scrutiny, and there was at the time, and you can see it even with Grand Theft Auto 6, where that gameplay got released and many people were saying that this game looks terrible, this game looks awful, but it was released in an unfinished state, and so was Half-Life 2, I guess, when many people got to play an unfinished version of the game. And it's actually a really funny story, because the guy actually tried to get a job offer from Gabe Newell himself. He literally tried to get a job, and Gabe just kind of played along with it, and basically he arrived for his job interview and got arrested. So, you know, you win some, you lose some when it comes to, if your game gets stolen, then, you know, you get a bit of justice. But I just think it's a little funny story. It's just the fact that he thought he could get away with it, hacking the game, selling it, well, not selling it, but distributing it off to many other people, and then thinking, yeah, I'm just gonna get a job at Valve for this. But despite this slight setback, Half-Life 2 was eventually released to critical acclaim, but this incident still remains a notable chapter in the Half-Life story. And it's often talked about as something of a challenge for game developers as well, because it is a real potential threat for any game that gets released. Now, staying on topic, but also kind of veering off topic as well, Valve is very, very reluctant to bring out third entries, and it extends past Half-Life 3. Portal 2, despite critical acclaim and fan outcry that they really loved the series, they never released a third entry, which is just baffling. And even Team Fortress 2 and Left 4 Dead 2, both popular and immensely favourable games when it came to the gaming community, just never ever received sequels, and it's kind of a shame that they never materialised. And this kind of trend has left many people to think that Valve's kind of library and series of games has just been left incomplete, because even Half-Life ended on a cliffhanger and that story never got resolved. And as I mentioned earlier, there have been multiple speculative reasons why we have not seen a Half-Life 3. Number one being the most obvious, the immense pressure and the expectations surrounding the Half-Life franchise. The legacy of the other entries would set the bar way too high, and Valve might worry that it won't meet player expectations when it does release. At number two, you've also got Valve's internal culture. Now, Valve has emphasized that a flat management scheme where individual projects can be chosen by people, and this might have led to a lack of coordinated effort towards one single title. And thirdly, while Valve does encourage creativity and brand new ideas, this means that there is an absence for older ideas and older franchises like Half-Life and Portal and Left 4 Dead and Team Fortress, and ultimately they're just moving to bigger and better things, I guess. And Valve kind of took a half step forward with the Half-Life franchise when they released Half-Life Alyx. Yeah, it's like a half step. It's not all the way there, but that released in 2020, and Half-Life Alyx kind of represented a big shift in technology and what people could do with video games. But it was also kind of a pivot for the franchise. It was set between Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2, and it marked Valve's return to the Half-Life series, so it wasn't dead entirely. But because it was in VR, it was this groundbreaking thing, but it also didn't fulfill the expectations of what a Half-Life 3 should be. And while the VR title was kind of critically acclaimed, it just didn't meet the expectations that most people had, which is something that Valve probably is worrying about if they did release another third entry in the Half-Life franchise. But it was really kind of perceived as a side story rather than a mainline entry, purely because it's set in between Half-Life 1 and 2, so it's kind of a Half-Life 1.5. But because it was in VR, it also limited the availability for people to play. If you do not own a $6 billion VR headset, then unfortunately you just can't play Half-Life Alyx. So that limited availability with a player base meant that Half-Life Alyx still kind of dipped down pretty quickly. And because it was less accessible to many people, it left many fans still yearning for a traditional sequel. And Valve's kind of had a big push towards technology in recent years, and Valve shifted its focus from game development to expanding its platforms like Steam, the Steam Deck, and other ventures as well. And, you know, props to them, they have done a tremendous job. Steam is the biggest gaming PC platform out there at this point. And after Half-Life Alyx, they still kept with the technology theme and released the Steam Deck, which is essentially just a handheld PC. And this pivot to hardware rather than software, like games for example, means that there's been a dramatic business-focused shift when it comes to Valve. But this is at a potential cost of game franchises that they started, but unfortunately they didn't finish, like Half-Life 3, Team Fortress, and also Portal, and also Left 4 Dead, and yeah, they kind of abandoned them. And the absence of Half-Life 3 has had a profound impact on the gaming community. The series' legacy still does continue, however, and it has inspired many different indie game developers and game developers alike, and also modders as well, who are just modding Valve's titles. Because Valve's community have kind of taken it upon themselves to mod Valve's games to keep them going and adding that longevity to them, where games nowadays you see them for like a year and then disappear and then the new thing comes out. And there have been tons and tons and tons of mods surrounding Half-Life, just keeping that longevity going for the Half-Life franchise, which Valve apparently doesn't want to do. And this enduring appeal of the franchise means that there is still a lasting influence the Half-Life franchise has on gamers alike. But unfortunately, the question as to whether Half-Life 3 will ever be released unfortunately is unanswered. And factors like Valve for some reason not releasing third entries, I'm convinced at this point that it is actually just a conspiracy theory, but you've also got fan demand. People would expect way too high of the Half-Life franchise, or any franchise that Valve revives. But then also you've got stuff like the business shift of Valve and how they've moved from software to hardware, and they're trying new ventures with technology like VR and the Steam Deck. And while Half-Life Alyx did satisfy some craving for the Half-Life franchise, it didn't fulfill it all, and people are still wanting a true sequel to Half-Life 2. And as Valve continues to innovate with technology, it leaves Half-Life 3 in an elusive state. It's an enigma at this point, making fans wonder if they will ever see a true sequel to some of their favourite games. Now, I've tried to answer the questions about Half-Life 3 as best as I can, but I've also got videos on Portal 3 and also Team Fortress 3. They are a great next step for you to watch, so thank you so much.